Alrighty, welcome back. Today is going to be Excel day 4, last day. Whoop. And today we're going to be talking about charts, and how to like manipulate and use those, create them, a couple of viewing options in Excel, and then a tiny bit about printing at the end, if that's of any use. So, once you have the files downloaded, we're just going to go ahead and open up Microsoft Excel here real quick, and go ahead and get started. Okay, so once you have this open, just go ahead and open up our files for today. And you'll notice that in this folder we have a finished file and then the one that we're going to be working with. You can kind of just reference to the finished if you'd like. I'm not going to change anything about it, but I'm just going to open up this charts file right here. So there. Okay, cool. So the main part about today is going to be taking, tables or data that we have here and showing that data in charts. Okay, so first off, we want this demand table over here in the N and O columns. So we want the price and quantity. So our prices right here, and then the total quantities will be down here. Okay, you'll notice that the prices are just whole numbers, right? They're the money data format, right? Accounting format. But down here, our quantity are a few functions here, like sum. But we will talk about that a bit later, why that will matter for what we're wanting to do here. So the first thing we'll want to do is something called paste special, which is we're going to copy this and we want it to go in this column. Right, so if we want it to go from a row to a column, we'll need to right click, paste special, and transpose. So you click on that, you'll see it brings over the formatting from these cells, right, with that kind of underline on it. You can change that however you want. I'll probably just not worry too much about formatting just in this screencast, but for your class, you can tell them to. You could take off that bottom border if they want. And then for this one, again, we'll just select it, copy, select where we want it to go. We'll right click, paste special, and then we'll come down here to the paste special menu. The reason why we want to do this is we can select two things at once. So we want just the values because right now they're formulas, they're functions. And we don't want to just copy over that function. We just want the number there, like 123 or 119, and so forth. So we'll want to select values, and then we'll also want to transpose. This is why we're in this submenu, right? You can explain a couple of what these other ones do if you'd like, but basically just know it's important because we want to do two things at once, values and transpose it. Okay, so once you have this, you could have a bit of time, give them time to get these both in, paste special wise, and then we're going to create our first chart. So to create a chart, we'll select the data that we want the chart to reference, come up into insert, and the first one we're going to do is a scatter plot. It's this two lines with some dots in between them. And if you click on scatter, you'll see it found this title, which it kind of highlights in this red, and then the y-axis and the x-axis. Okay, so we can see that line there. And similar to a lot of other things like tables and whatnot, there is a different tab here for the chart design and format. So this is a good time to kind of talk about the formatting of a chart like this, fill. You could do anything like that if you'd like. Shape outline. You could see what that does there. So, definitely a lot of different things that we can do here with our charts. Bring forward, say you had multiple charts and you wanted to bring one forward. Height and width, you could also just change it with these kind of guys right here. But if you have a specific dimension that you want, you'll put it right there. And then you can format it also here as well with fill, some border. So as a teacher, you can go over a couple of these options and then just give them time to kind of explore in here. Like, what does glow do, right? So you could talk about that and give them a few seconds to kind of format their chart. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the chart design. So in here, you'll see that there are some presets of designs. You can get these from the Format tab, or here are some presets that you can use. You can change the colors of basically the formats that you are going for. All right, so if you kind of change that theme, then it will change all of these to that color scheme. The other thing, it would be the add chart element. Okay, so this one is axes, basically just where you want it to have labels. Like for ours, the quantity and price are on separate axes. So we have those both selected default. Axis titles, you could have those selected, chart title, data labels, and there's definitely a few here. The one that we're going to care about here is the trend line. That's pretty nice and useful to aid our chart here. So there's options for none, linear, exponential. The one that we want is exponential here. And you'll see that picks those lines and it creates the line of best fit, pretty much. It has that trend line, right? So this is pretty useful here. And then, of course, you could always come in here and change these titles and whatnot manually if you would need to do that. Okay, so at this point, you can give the students in the class a couple minutes to just design their chart however they'd like, and then we'll get going on the next part. Okay, so for this next one, I'm actually just going to copy and paste our values down, just so we don't have to get them again, because we're actually going to be using the same ones, but the inverse demand will just be flipping the x and the y axes, which I'll show to you in a second. So select your data again, insert, and it's going to be the same process, scatter plot, and we'll create this chart right here. And then what we want to do here is click on this select data. So this is basically the data source that this chart is looking at. Right? So the data range is what we specified when we created it. And then the name is going to be that quantity. You'll see that it kind of highlights where it's referencing to. X values right here, and the Y values, right? So that right column. So if we want to switch the X and the Y, it's as easy as in your X value, uh, kind of just option here, we can either just click here and select the other column, come back, oh, and let's see. Okay, there. Just to have that O column, and then for this one, I'll just select that N column, and then we're good. And then if you just hit OK, you'll see that it flips those for us, the X and the Y axes. So that's pretty nice. You could also switch them, but this is a nice way just so you don't run into any issues. So you know exactly what it's doing behind the scenes. And then here, you can give them a couple minutes to remember or to kind of review. How do you add a trend line? Or how can I do this or that with the chart? It's basically just up to you as the teacher what you want to focus on with these scatter plots and charts. But I'm just going to be doing the bare basics here. Cool. So the revenue table, again, we'll just want to copy and paste this down. So for revenue, you might ask a question like, well, how do we find the revenue if we have the price and quantity, right? You can just have these numbers and multiply them. That'll be our revenue between them. And then you'll just fill that and we'll get all these values. Again, you can make this look pretty, but I'm just going to keep it like this for now. So for our revenue graph, we want our revenue and our price ranges. So of course we can't do this because if we select all of this, then it's going to have three. Right? We're not doing a 3D graph with an X, Y, and Z axis. So we just want to select these two columns. So the way we'll do that is select one of them, hold shift, or sorry, select one of them, my bad. Select or hold command on your keyboard and then select the other one. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing, come up into insert, scatter plot, and we have this revenue chart. So, if you were looking at this, you would find that the ice creams, right, ice cream, yeah, for 250 are making the most revenue. So that's why that would be useful here. And then you'll see if we want to have a trend line and you select something like exponential, it's not going to work perfectly the first time. So if you want to change that and get more options for our trend line, you'll double click on the trend line itself. And over here on the right hand side, you'll see there's some options. So the one that we want is going to be polynomial and ordered to. So you can change this, right? And that's just a mathematical formula. Polynomial, order 2, and then you could talk about some other things here if you'd like. But for the basics, that's what you want there. Okay, moving on to this pie chart. The one that I'm going to do here is just this chart of gender. The histogram that you can put here that you see in the completed, you can do that. You can also just use this data and create other charts with it, however you want to teach the class, basically. I would say day 4 is the most open to interpretation and just charts that you think can be useful and different things like that. Basically, for chart of gender, we want to count if they're a male or a female. So here, right, remembering back to previous days, you can have this as an activity to remember or to remind them how to do this, but I'll just do it real quick, right? Count if, that's going to be our range, and then our criteria will be M for male. Let's go ahead and hit check, and then I'm going to copy and paste that same formula, but then with F, and let's change that. Okay, so we have these two numbers here. So to create a pie chart, we'll again select our data, insert pie chart, and we'll use the 2D pie here. You could use like pie of a pie. There's definitely some other ones, but for our thing right here, we'll just want to change that. Again, you can come in here and change the title to like gender of employees or whatever this is to you. You could change that. And then the other thing that you'll see in the completed file is that it has a couple data labels. So you can do this if you'd like outside end. It'll give you that number there. And you could always change that if you want. Label options, you can either have the value or the percentage. I think in the completed it has the percentage. But just know you could always change the label position after the fact. Go inside center, center, or best fit. It's basically just what Excel thinks looks the best based on just things around it. But chart design, it looks very, very similar, so I won't take a lot of time in it. But there's definitely some presets that you can do, and then format, it looks all the same here. Okay, and then the last couple of things I'll touch on will be the viewing and the printing. So for view, this is what your view tab looks like. View tab is useful to see basically for what we want right now. We could talk about the split. So split finds where your charts are, where most of your data is, and it throws these gray lines out that then you can scroll around and it splits it for you, right? Where it thinks it might be helpful for you. And then if you click into one of them, you can, go left and right as well. So that's the split. Then you can always turn it off if you want. Hide will just hide your entire worksheet or this window. And you can switch between windows if you're working with multiple Excel workbooks. Here you can, toggle these things on and off, sometimes without the grid lines if you want to show someone something. Sometimes this is pretty visually appealing. You can turn your formula bar off And then the headings, you could even turn those off. So that's what those do. Zoom, feel like that's pretty obvious. New window. All right, just open up a new window of Excel to work in. And then the freeze panes. Basically, like if I didn't want to lose this kind of, uh, let's just say, lose these first, say, like 10 people, and I wanted to freeze them so that I could scroll around everything else, I would select them, freeze it, and then basically they're just frozen there. And it creates, see these gray lines again, that we can still see the top and bottom there. And then you could always unfreeze panes. There's also a freeze top row. If you have important information or headers on the top row, that could be useful. Um, and then the same thing for freeze, the first column. Okay, and then the last thing is printing. So basically printing isn't super common in Excel. Like just think of the last time you've seen an Excel type like spreadsheet printed. Like it's not very common, but you could go over a few of these things here. So the page layout is pretty important here. There's some more margin stuff, orientation, but I would recommend that before you come into this option, you come into your view and you do page break layout. This will show you if I printed this right now, where would those breaks be and how would it print out? How would it look? And then we can come into our page layout and see if you change like some of these margins. You'll see that narrow will have more data in there, and then just normal will shrink those proportions, right? You can change the orientation if you want. Size, if you're printing to a specific size of paper, you can change that right there. Um, and then breaks. So one thing that you can do, say I wanted a break right here. I only wanted these first 20 people on that first page. You can insert a page break, and it will just set that right there. Boom. And you could also print from that way. Background, you can set up, any kind of picture to the background of your Excel worksheet when you print it. But again, I just don't know if this is like super useful that people want or anything. There's also some themes that you can use with your worksheet, um, just so you guys know. But page layout, yeah. And then if you come back into view, yeah, so this is your printing page. And then just like anything else, um, if you want to end up actually printing it, you'll just come up into File and Print. And then it will show you this again, another preview, and you'll see that that first page break that we set, sorry, it's kind of super small, but anyway, you can see that that first page is just those first, 19 or 20 people or whatever it is. And then here you could also change those things that we could have changed before, after. Okay, but yeah, so the printing and the viewing, I think, are pretty small sections. Once you've done that, though, you could come into these other ones. This is basically just a bunch of data that you can use to give time for activities. You can think of, clever activities like think of two charts, right? Different ones that we haven't used today. There's also this recommended, you could look at that. But give them a couple activities with this data here, and they could use the space up here to the right to create a couple charts that they like and are pleased with. But yeah, basically that's day 4. And yeah, thanks for listening.